Sanger.
She said that the most merciful thing that a family could do to one of its young is to kill it.
Well, I'm sure that was taken out of context.
In this video, I'm going to show you who Margaret Sanger really was and why she founded Planned Parenthood, while demonstrating a visceral hatred for children, parenthood, marriage, and the Catholic Church. Every quote I'm about to give you has been verified and is well documented. But from my view, I believe that there should be no more babies. The most merciful thing that the large family does to one of its infant members is to kill it. We don't want the word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. I accepted an invitation to talk to the women's branch of the Ku Klux Klan. I was escorted to the platform, was introduced, and began to speak. In the end, through simple illustrations, I believed I had accomplished my purpose. A dozen invitations to speak to similar groups were proffered.
Do you believe there is such a thing as sin?
Well, I think the greatest sin in the world is bringing children into the world that have disease from their parents, that have no chance in the world to be a human being, practically. Delinquents, prisoners, all sorts of things just marked when they're born. That, to me, is the greatest sin that people can commit.
Hey guys, it's Pastor Mill, and I'm back with the third installment in the series, The Truth About Abortion. Yes, I've been away for a while, guys. I haven't been really up on YouTube. I've been kind of here and there on it. I have been doing a bunch of short videos, but at the same time, guys, I really don't have a whole lot of time all the time. And to be honest with you, YouTube is probably a small, insignificant part of my life. But anyhow, I managed to get some things together, some free time, so I decided to get back into projects, and of course, let's talk about it. This is the third installment that will conclude the series, The Truth About Abortion. We're going to talk about the procedure of abortion in an animated cartoon, as well as we're going to talk a little about Margaret Sanger, yes, the founder of Parent Planhood, who initiated the program of Parent Planhood in the very beginning to get rid of the black race. Yes, you heard it. She was a very racist woman. And she was following the same programs that the Nazis implemented during World War II.
The term eugenics is basically a set of beliefs and practices that aim to improve the genetic quality of a human population. There have been various applications of eugenics, perhaps the most famous being the Germans before and during World War II, which was condemned by the Nuremberg war crimes trials. But the Germans did not invent eugenics. In fact, they were inspired by the founder of the taxpayer-funded Planned Parenthood. The truth behind the genesis of that organization and its founder are much darker than most Americans realize. Who was the real Margaret Sanger? Why was she heralded by the Third Reich as the greatest socialist in America? Why do modern Democrats who claim to support the African American population justify presenting her as a cultural icon?
Yeah, we're going to talk about it. Now, of course, part 1 and part 2 of the video series, The Truth About Abortion, is very important. But I feel that this one, this part 3, is more important than the other two, because it will give everybody a true understanding of what goes on during the performing of an abortion. Now, what prompted me to do this video in the first place was people's ignorance on abortion and what goes on behind the scenes, that sort of thing. And I believe I did a pretty good banged up job in part 1 and part 2 to explain things about abortion that perhaps many people didn't even give any thought to. But this video will show in a cartoon way of the procedure of abortion, which is important. Now, I don't know if Jessica watched part 1 or part 2. I have no idea. But if she hasn't watched 1 or 2, that's unfortunate. But I truly hope she watches this one, because she's the one who came forward and pretty much initiated these videos to begin with by saying this.
To tear the limb from the baby's body. One by one, the rest of the limbs are removed, along with the intestines, the spine, and the heart and lungs.
If you think that ripping a baby's arms and legs off while it's still alive and twisting its head off...
Oh, please educate yourself on fucking abortions. I was sick the fact that you had to make it sick to get people to believe you. Ripping off legs, ripping off arms, ripping off heads.
As you could clearly hear, Jessica completely disagreed with that Lady Daisy on the procedure of abortion. Well, in this animation cartoon, we're going to lay everything to rest. Because in the cartoon, there's a man explaining everything that goes on. And this man is actually a doctor, an abortionist doctor.
I'm Dr. Anthony Levatino, and in the early part of my career as an OBGYN, I performed over 1,200 abortions.
Who performed over 1,200 abortions. He appeared before Congress, and once he came to the realization that what he was doing was wrong, and it was somebody's daughter or son on the table. Why it took him 1,200 abortions to figure that out, I have no idea. But anyways, he came to the conclusion that what he was doing was wrong. And he talks us through the actual procedure of abortion. So for Jessica and others who are interested in knowing the actual truth on how abortion is performed, please watch this video. Thank you, and God bless.
My name is Dr. Anthony Levatino. I'm a practicing obstetrician gynecologist, and I performed over 1,200 abortions. First, I'm going to describe a first trimester medical abortion. This is a procedure in which the mother swallows pills in order to terminate her baby, and it is performed up to the 9th week of pregnancy. The procedure involves 2 steps. Step 1. At the abortion clinic or doctor's office, the woman takes pills which contain mifepristone, also called RU46. RU46 blocks the action of a hormone called progesterone. Progesterone is naturally produced in the mother's body to stabilize the lining of the uterus. When RU46 blocks progesterone, the lining of the mother's uterus breaks down, cutting off blood and nourishment to the baby, who then dies inside the mother's womb. It is important to note that even after it has been taken, it is possible to reverse the effects of RU46 and save the baby if progesterone is administered. The sooner, the better. Step 2. 24 to 48 hours after taking RU46, the woman takes misoprostol, also called Cytotec, that is administered either orally or vaginally. RU46 and misoprostol together cause severe cramping, contractions, and often heavy bleeding to force the dead baby out of the woman's uterus. The process can be very intense and painful, and the bleeding and contractions can last from a few hours to several days. While she could lose her baby anytime and anywhere during this process, the woman will often sit on a toilet as she prepares to expel the child, which she will then flush. She may even see her dead baby within the pregnancy sac. At 9 weeks, for example, the baby will be almost an inch long, and if she looks carefully, she might be able to count the fingers and toes. RU46 is only FDA approved for the first 7 weeks of pregnancy. While RU46 can be used off-label up to 9 weeks, the failure rate increases as the pregnancy progresses. If failure occurs, she will usually be offered a surgical abortion.
Oh, please. Please educate yourself on fucking abortions. You know what's sick? The fact that you have to make it sick to get people to believe you. Ripping off legs, ripping off arms, ripping off heads.
First trimester surgical abortion called suction D&C, dilatation and curettage. This is the most frequently performed abortion and is used typically from 5 to 13 weeks of pregnancy. After administering anesthesia, the abortionist uses a speculum like this. This is placed inside the vagina and opened using this screw on the side, allowing the abortionist to see the cervix, the entrance to the uterus. The cervix acts as a gate that stays closed for the duration of pregnancy, protecting the baby until it is ready for birth. The abortionist uses a series of metal rods called dilators, like these, which increase in thickness, and inserts them into the cervix to dilate it, gaining access to the inside of the uterus where the baby resides. The baby has a heartbeat, fingers, toes, arms, and legs, but its bones are still weak and fragile. The abortionist takes a suction catheter like this one. This is a 14 French suction catheter. It's clear plastic, about 9 inches long, and it has a hole through the center. It is inserted through the cervix into the uterus. The suction machine is then turned on with a force 10 to 20 times more powerful than your household vacuum cleaner. The baby is rapidly torn apart by the force of the suction and squeezed through this tubing down into the suction machine, followed by the placenta. Though the uterus is mostly emptied at this point, one of the risks of a suction D&C is incomplete abortion, essentially pieces of the baby or placenta left behind. This can lead to infection or bleeding. In an attempt to prevent this, the abortionist uses a curette to scrape a lining of the uterus. The curette is basically a long-handled curved blade. Once the uterus is empty, the speculum is removed and the abortion is complete.
Oh, please. Please educate yourself on fucking abortions. You know what's sick? The fact that you have to make it sick to get people to believe you. Ripping off legs, ripping off arms, ripping off heads.
Second trimester surgical abortion called dilatation and evacuation, or D&E. A D&E is performed between 13 and 24 weeks of pregnancy. After administering anesthesia, the abortionist uses a weighted speculum, like this one, that opens the vagina widely. Because second trimester babies are so large, this greater access facilitates a late-term abortion. Late-term abortion requires that the cervix be prepared 24 to 48 hours in advance with laminaria. Laminaria is a type of sterilized seaweed that absorbs water over 8 to 12 hours and swells to several times its original diameter. Once removed, metal dilators can be used to further open the cervix as needed. Once the cervix has been stretched open, the suction tube is placed inside. A baby at 20 weeks gestation is as big as the length of my hand, from head to rump, not counting the legs. The suction machine is turned on, and pale yellow amniotic fluid surrounding the baby is suctioned out through the catheters. With babies this big, they don't fit through catheters this size. The baby's bones and skull are too strong to be torn apart by suction alone. This is a Sofer clamp. A Sofer clamp is made of stainless steel. It's about 13 inches long. The business end is about 2.5 inches long and 1/2 inch wide, and there are rows of sharp teeth. This is a grasping instrument. When it gets a hold of something, it does not let go. The abortionist uses this clamp to grasp an arm or leg. Once he has a firm grip, the abortionist pulls hard in order to tear the limb from the baby's body. One by one, the rest of the limbs are removed, along with the intestines, the spine, and the heart and lungs.
If you think that ripping a baby's arms and legs off while it's still alive and twisting its head off.
Oh, please educate yourself on fucking abortions. I was sick, the fact that you had to make it sick to get people to believe you. Ripping off legs, ripping off arms, ripping off heads.
Usually the most difficult part of the procedure is extracting the baby's head, which is about the size of a large plum at 20 weeks. The head is grasped and crushed. The abortionist knows he has crushed the skull when a white substance comes out of the cervix. This was the baby's brains. The abortionist then removes skull pieces. He removes the placenta and any leftover parts of the baby with a curette, scraping the lining of the uterus for any remaining tissue. The abortionist then collects the baby parts and reassembles them to make sure that there are 2 arms, 2 legs, and all the pieces. Once all the parts have been accounted for, the abortion is complete. For the woman, this procedure carries a significant risk of major complications. Finally, I'm going to describe a 3rd trimester induced abortion, which is performed at 25 weeks to term. At this point, the baby is almost fully developed and viable, meaning he or she could survive outside the womb if the mother were to go into labor prematurely. Because the baby is so large and developed, this procedure takes 3 or 4 days to complete. On day 1, the abortionist uses a large needle to inject a drug called digoxin. Digoxin is generally used to treat heart problems, but a high enough dosage of digoxin will cause fatal cardiac arrest. The abortionist inserts the needle with the digoxin through the woman's abdomen or through her vagina and into the baby, targeting either the head, torso, or heart. The baby will feel it. Babies at this stage feel pain. When the needle pierces the baby's body and the digoxin takes effect, the life of the baby will end. The abortionist then inserts multiple sticks of seaweed called laminaria into the woman's cervix. They will slowly open up the cervix for delivery of a stillborn baby. While the woman waits for the laminaria to dilate her cervix, she carries her dead baby inside of her for 2 to 3 days. On day 2, the abortionist replaces the laminaria and may perform a second ultrasound to ensure the baby is dead. If the child is still alive, he administers another lethal dose of digoxin. The woman then goes back to where she is staying while her cervix continues to dilate. If she goes into labor and is unable to make it to the clinic in time, she will give birth at home or in a hotel. In this case, she may be advised to deliver her baby into a bathroom toilet. The abortionist then comes to remove the baby and clean up. If she can make it to the clinic, she will do so during her severest contractions and deliver her dead son or daughter. If the baby does not come out whole, then the procedure becomes a D&E, a dilation and evacuation, and the abortionist uses clamps and forceps to dismember the baby, piece by piece. Once the placenta and all the body parts have been removed, the abortion is complete. I'm Dr. Anthony Levatino, and in the early part of my career as an OBGYN, I performed over 1,200 abortions. One day, after completing one of those abortions, I looked at the remains of a preborn child whose life I had ended, and all I could see was someone's son or daughter. I came to realize that killing a baby at any stage of pregnancy for any reason is wrong. I want you to know today, no matter where you're at or what you've done, you can change. Make a decision today to protect the preborn. Thank you for your time. I will no longer do any more abortions.
So guys, if you made it this far in the video, congratulations. You know, the truth is truth. And sometimes that truth can be dark, downright dirty. But at the end of the day, it is the truth. Now, of course, let's not put all hats on Granny, of course, you know. I mean, there's a lot of people that share that same sentiment that she did. And in reality, it's okay to be wrong in your thinking. It's okay not to know the truth sometimes. But we have to be open for correction. Look, if I don't know something, I look it up. I never guess. If I don't know something and I need to be educated on something, I actually look into things before I speak. It's okay to be corrected. It's okay to say, I don't know something. Correction is a wonderful thing. Knowledge is power. The more we know, the more we know. I mean, we just heard from that abortion doctor who performed over 1,200 abortions. So if there's anybody to testify to this truth, it's him. I'll be honest, I don't know everything that's involved with abortion and that. Now, I am pretty knowledgeable on the issue or the topic, but I don't know everything. And I even had my mind opened up as I reviewed these videos for my own video. I've done a lot of investigation in this series, a lot of looking into things. I didn't want to put out any false information. I didn't want to be ignorant of facts, that sort of thing. So everything I put in these 3 episodes of the series are in fact nothing but truth from truthful sources. So anyhow, guys, after you've seen that, what that abortion doctor just professed, he was also in Congress as well. You have to admit in your own heart of hearts, that's some pretty dark stuff. So let's continue now with a little segment. I'm going to have Doug, Mr. Predicto, do a voiceover concerning Margaret Sanger.
Margaret Sanger wrote, "Negro parents need birth control to help alleviate some of the needless suffering and heartbreak to get firmly established on the road to health and better living." Margaret Sanger wanted a lot of Americans wiped out and even harbored special disdain for Black Americans. She instigated the Negro Project in 1939. The goal was to reduce Black population. She said this would be done through birth control, but she vocally supported forced sterilization and segregation of the unfit. Even Planned Parenthood itself admits that Sanger supported the 1927 Supreme Court ruling in Buck versus Bell that compulsory sterilization of the unfit was allowable under the Constitution. Sanger campaigned hard for the success of her Negro Project and raised funding to make it a reality. In a letter to her friend Clarence Gamble of Procter & Gamble in 1939, Sanger wrote, "We do not want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, and the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs to any of their more rebellious members."
I just wanted to pause for a moment and elaborate on a few things. Margaret Sanger was actually a racist. She hated Black people, guys. She hated them. In fact, a big part of this program, Parent Planhood, was to extinguish the lives of Black people and keep the population down as low as possible. So she invented, kind of like eugenics, what the Germans did in World War II.
We don't want the word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. I accepted an invitation to talk to the women's branch of the Ku Klux Klan. I was escorted to the platform, was introduced, and began to speak. In the end, through simple illustrations, I believed I had accomplished my purpose. A dozen invitations to speak to similar groups were proffered.
Do you believe there is such a thing as sin?
Well, I think the greatest sin in the world is bringing children into the world that have disease from their parents, that have no chance in the world to be a human being, practically. Delinquents, prisoners, all sorts of things just marked when they're born. That, to me, is the greatest sin that people can commit.
Like if somebody was born with a lifelong illness, or, like they were born with missing arms or missing legs, or having Down syndrome, or that sort of thing, or even autism. The Nazis under Hitler seen this as being a problem because they don't feel that like somebody with autism should go forward and have a child, or somebody with Down syndrome perhaps should have a child, or somebody with, an illness in their DNA and end up passing it on to future children. Hitler and the Nazis seen this as being weak, so they came up with a way to correct it. And Margaret Sanger also went along with the eugenics program in thinking that, hey, she can get rid of all the illnesses. She thought, well, she could prevent many more illnesses from being passed on, as well as kids with Down syndrome, that sort of thing. And of course, she's seen the Black people for some reason as a threat. Now, a lot of people don't like this part of history, but it is what it is. Let's continue with Doug.
Sanger wanted Planned Parenthood to train Black doctors and ministers to spread the unholy gospel of population control. She believed she could use their trusted leaders to warm Black Americans up to her agenda. Planned Parenthood even built a clinic in Harlem targeting the Black community in New York City. According to Planned Parenthood report at the time, this clinic started by Margaret Sanger as the Harlem branch of her clinic at 17 West 16th Street, New York City, which is the largest of its kind in the world. Planned Parenthood would go on to place its facilities in minority communities all over America, a practice that continues to this very day. The Negro Project did not die with Margaret Sanger. The horrifying reality is that in recent years, more Black children in Planned Parenthood's hub of New York City were aborted than born alive. In 1975, Dr. Laverne Tolbert was invited to sit on the board of Planned Parenthood in New York City. She was the one and only woman on the board and the only person of color. She agreed to join because she thought it could help the women of her community. But during her time on the board, Dr. Tolbert learned about the abortion methods Planned Parenthood had committed. She was so horrified by the information that she ultimately stepped down. She writes, "During the course of my 5-year tenure, we received a lot of literature. Most discussed population control and the concerns for the growing number of people in the world, poor people. I struggled with the question, which population are they trying to control?" She says, "As a Black woman, the question kept coming back to me like a boomerang. I wondered why abortion was more necessary for my ethnic group, why this organization fought so hard to give us the particular right when the rights for better education, better jobs, and better housing seemed paramount. The racism doesn't stop at their agenda." Planned Parenthood also has a long history of accepting racist donations with the understanding that the money will be used to kill Black children. In a televised debate with U.S. Representative Bob Dornan in 1989, Planned Parenthood President Faye Wattleton admitted that Planned Parenthood accepts donations from people who want to support us because they want all welfare mothers and all Black women to stop having children. In 2008, numerous Black Parenthood affiliates were caught agreeing to accept donations earmarked to kill Black Americans. Calls came from an undercover journalist posing as a racist concerned about his white son being disadvantaged by affirmative action. The caller told Planned Parenthood of Idaho, "We just think the less Black kids out there, the better." The Planned Parenthood employee responded with, "Understandable, understandable. I'm excited and I want to make sure I don't leave anything out." Black employees said they regularly experience acts of racism and anti-Blackness from their white colleagues, but found that when they reported problems to human resources, there was no meaningful consequences or accountability for racial harm. One gesture of atonement from Planned Parenthood was to remove Margaret Sanger's name from one of the buildings in New York City. The fact is that Planned Parenthood doesn't have a business without discrimination. Removing Sanger's name will not remove her enduring legacy. Bigotry is the whole game at Planned Parenthood. Justice demands that Planned Parenthood be defunded and shut down.
You see, for the most part, this information was hidden from the public. Most people didn't even know this sort of thing about Margaret Sanger and how she actually felt towards the Black people and Hispanic and other people of color. And of course, they try to keep it, on the low as much as possible, because they knew that people would fight back and push back. Back in the day, people used to get a Margaret Sanger award for your accomplishments in the field of abortions, that sort of thing, okay? But once all the news started coming out about who she truly was as a person, a racist, someone who hated people of other skin colors, they ended up having to shy away from her actual name and stop giving out the Margaret Sanger Award. Interesting. So what you see here is the left eating the left. There was so much shame and humiliation attached to that woman's name that they ended up having to abandon her award system and keep her name off as much as possible of any information that was associated with Parent Planhood. And anybody that supports Parent Planhood is in fact not only just supporting a murderous cult, but in fact are supporting racism. For example, if you get behind and support anything concerning Hitler, you will be classified as a Nazi. Am I right? So if you support Margaret Sanger and her dream, the Parent Planhood, you also got to acknowledge the person behind it all, who was a racist, a person who hated people simply because of the melatonin in their skin. Anyhow, guys, I'd like to thank you very much for watching this whole series. Now, of course, it took me a while to get to the third part. I'm a busy guy. YT is certainly not my whole life. But anyhow, I'd like to thank you, and I hope you got something out of the video series. And remember, guys, I do realize that abortion is a sensitive topic for people. But what am I to stand on? The truth or the lies? Am I supposed to be pro-life or pro-choice? Should I be defender of the innocent or defender of those who were about to do something that in most cases they regret? Anyhow, guys, thanks for watching. God bless.